Okay, so last meeting, we discussed about Romanesque architecture. So we discussed the climatic influences, we discussed the geographical, geological, and all the references or influences that we have regarding Romanesque architecture and types of buildings, yung plano, and so on and so forth. So today, we will continue with the uh, types or examples of Romanesque architecture. At the same time, we will review also, or we will tackle the terms from Visual Dictionary of Architecture. So again, as I mentioned before, that book, the Visual Dictionary of Architecture, is one of the best book na pwede ninyo mahimong reference. So aside from History of Architecture, tanan na to sa Visual Dictionary of Architecture. So sa katong wala pa, naka-open na nga book, ako na siyang gi-post sa ato ang MS Teams. So you can download that PDF file, or if you have funds, you can buy that book kanang hard copy yun. It costs around 1,700, and it's a good investment. It's a good investment kanang mupalit mo books, especially mga decade books. It's a good investment in your architecture career. 1,700 lang. Palit mo gani mo kanang mga bundles or mga skins sa mga games, di ba? Sa Valorant, kahit mga skins. So, tagay sa ninyo og funds ang inyong investment for your architecture career. Okay? So, before ta nag-end, last meeting, we discussed here. So, dirita mo so good for today's meeting. Round arches, we have barrel vaults, we have pier supporting vaults, we have groin vaults, and rib vault. So these are the architectural elements that are present during the Romanesque architecture. Like when you look at a certain church, at a certain building, if naagarin ni sila ng mga features, there's a possibility, but not 100%, but there's a possibility that that building belongs to Romanesque architecture. Why I said nga dili 100% is because this other elements here are also present in other era. So for example, no, kana mga arches, mga vaults, it's also present in Gothic and other era. So here, later on ma-discuss na siya sa mga examples, sa mga churches, sa mga buildings as an examples. So here, to differentiate this vault, we have here the 4 types of vault. Upat lang na siya. So again, no, vault, there are 4 types. We have here the barrel vault. Kani siya, barrel vault. So it's the simplest form of vault, wherein if you have an arc, you have just to extend it. Ug sa SketchUp pa ninyo, nakabuhat na mo ani nga arc, inyo ra na siyang i-push-pull. So makabuhat na mo og you can create now your barrel vault. So if you try to refer here, the term abutment is, that's the support actually for this vault. The term abutment is abutting, meaning kanang nisandig siya, or kanang located right beside on that barrel vault. So this one here, the abutment, is the support para dili ni siya mabungkag here. The second type of vault is groin vault. So if you notice, there are 2 barrel vaults nga nag-cross. So that crossing here, it will create a groin, kanang siya nga line, which is actually a curved line. This one here. So gitawag na siya og groin vault. So from the barrel vault, naka-create ka og groin vault. So asa man usually makita ang groin vault? So you can see that vault on the crossing or in the transept. So if I may sketch it here, if mo ni imong plan, diba? If ano lang na siya, if rectangular in plan, mostly barrel vault na tanan, barrel vault. And for the cruciform plan, so na siya transept. This one here at the center is the crossing. This part right here, kaninga part, na diha ang groin vault. Diha makita ang groin vault actually. So here, at the crossing, usually na di makita ang groin bolt. And at the same time, that's also the part wherein you can see the rib bolt. So what's the difference between a rib bolt and a groin bolt? So the rib bolt here, the difference is on the type of arc used. So here, in the groin bolt, it uses a semicircular arc here. And here in the rib bolt, kita nimo na siya point. So it's a pointed arc here. So that point here, padungad to, that's what you call the rib. So there are two types of rib, the transverse and the longitudinal. So it's just the same with your section, di ba? Maging mo section sa inyong plano. The transverse section and the longitudinal section. But nowadays, if maging mo plano, wala na kaya na siya ginagamit na term, kanang transverse section and longitudinal section. Mogamit pa ba mo na, class, guys? Kanang term, transverse and longitudinal. If the floor plan nowadays, like for example, if I will create a section right here, the standard nowadays is na kay tag, and then yung pangalan ng tag, like A, and then arrow left. So if we create a section like that, itawag na siya section A. That's the industry standard nowadays. No, medyo nawala na ng term na transverse o longitudinal in terms of creating section, ha. Medyo nilayo gamay pa. Just a reference or just a info for you guys in creating sections. So here, again, there are the two types of rib, the transverse and the longitudinal. So again, no, nganong gitawag siya rib bolt? It's because of the type of arc used. So yung gigamit na arc is pointed arc. And number 4, the last type is the fan bolt. So from the term fan, more siya paypay tanawon at the bottom part actually. Sa sulod niya, you know, if you look at that view there at the bottom part, more siya paypay tanawon. And this fan bolt is not, again, no, wala siya gigamit sa Romanesque architecture. This fan bolt is used or was used during the Gothic architecture. So tanan nga rib, barrel bolt, groin, tanan ni siya, Romanesque ni siya. But this fan bolt is specifically for Gothic architecture. So the term here, itawag siya lozenge. You can also call this lozenge in a term, in Gothic term. But lozenge yun siya pagbasa, no? That's the diamond nga na-create. This one. That's the diamond. So, kanang diamond nga yan na-create, that's the lozenge. So to give you an advanced info regarding the fan bolt, it looks like this. No, so asa mga lozenge, the lozenge is this one. Kanang kung asa nag-abot ang mga fan bolt. Ay, sorry. So if you notice, very obvious, no? Paypay o forma. So from the term itself, fan. So fan bolt. Tingnan na lang siya. So I think this is the part wherein we stop. Nangarita ni Hunong. So we will continue. So this is the part 2 of our Romanesque architecture discussion. Again, if you have questions, just let me know. Just type in the chat. And I will try to answer it if kabalo ko sa answer, and if dili, I will research for it. Okay. So for the Romanesque architecture, for the next few slides, we have here the terminologies from Visual Dictionary of Architecture by Lei Ching. So again, no, nganong ato ni siyang i-appeal ng mga terminologies? It's because aside from having those knowledge, having those terms, or knowing those terms, most of the board exam questions will be taken from this book, from this reference book. So tanan nga mga terms mostly nga rin lakwaon, no? Kay it's one of the, though there are a lot of dictionary of architecture, but this one is the most credible one. And this one is the kanabitong dali bitaw masabtan nga book. It's because the way it is created is visual. So, may mga drawings directly. Okay. So, we have here the first term, wheel window. So, for the wheel window, it's a rose window having distinctly radiating mullions or bars. And another term niya is Catherine wheel, or what we call marigold window. So it's very, very distinct in Romanesque architecture, kani siya nga wheel window. So here, for example, this is the Worms Cathedral in Germany. I think very familiar, no? Or dali ra makita asa ang rose window nga. So here, mo ni siya ang rose window. So if makita nimo ni siya ang kanang tibok perspective or tibok view on this cathedral, on this church, actually ang pinaka makita niya is the rose window. Kani siya. So the mullions or bars is actually this one. Kanang nag-connect from the inner or smaller circle going to the bigger circle. So kanang mga gagmay nga mga mullions or bars, mo na siya diri here. It connects from the inner circle to the bigger circle. So here, if you would ask, sir, kani sir, gitawag ko ba ni og wheel window or rose window? Dili na. Dili na siya gitawag og rose window or wheel window or Catherine wheel or marigold window. Dili na siya. It's just this one. Kani siya. So, unsa may tawag ani niya? There are terms for this one. Gitawag ni siya og mga trifoil for the 3, quadrifoil for the 4, and so on and so forth. Magadaghan. So, yung ana na siya forma. So, actually, this part of the church, kani mga ingani, is based on kanang sa flower form, kani mga ingani na portion. So, during this time around, based on that element, kanang unsay form sa flower petals, ilang gi-incorporate sa ilahang buildings. And it makes the distinct part of the church actually. Murag siya mo nakita directly. Murag gitawag siya again, no? Rose window. So, dili lang kay Romanesque architecture ang nagamit ani niya. So, if you noticed, we have here 2 examples. We have the Worms Cathedral in Germany here, and we have here the other cathedral in Amiens Cathedral in France. So if you notice, medyo simple lang, dili kay intricate. So this one is an example of Romanesque architecture. This one is an example of Gothic architecture. So what do you think is the difference? For me, no? The difference is the material that they use. Here, they use simple glass. Here, they use stained glass. Kanang glass nga naay color, kanang stained o pink. And then, some of them mo create og mga images if ever ma-shiningan og light, kanang maigo sa light. No? Ang iba na mo create og images. Or ang nag-iuban nga, gi-paint siya based on that image. Usually, mga saints. So that's the difference between Romanesque and Gothic architecture. Sa Gothic, mas intricate, mas nakadako, and the material they use in Gothic architecture is stained glass compared to the Romanesque architecture, which is just the simple rose window or wheel window, and then basic glass in gigamit, and then that's it. So later on, we will discuss this one in Gothic architecture, but just to give you a difference in terms of usage of those type of window, mao ni siya. And then, based on this picture, dali nimo makita, no? The difference between the two, the Romanesque versus the Gothic architecture. Okay, so again, no? Tawag na siya o wheel window. Or another term niya is rose window, another term niya is Catherine wheel, another term is marigold window. Another term we have here is the tympanum. So tympanum, it is the space between an arc and the horizontal head of a door or window below, often decorated with sculpture. So in Visual Dictionary of Architecture, ingani nga sketch ang inyong makita. Literally, si Dickie Ching is an architect, kanang author ani nga book, no? Is an architect who is also an instructor. And this, kanang mga drawings within that book is actually mga drawings ni Dickie Ching and some of his students. So mo nay mga, if makita mo lang ni Dota pag-drawing, that's the work of the students before ni Dickie Ching. Okay, so again, going back, the term tympanum means the space between an arc or the horizontal head of a door or window below, often decorated with sculpture. So based on these sketches or sketch, asa man diha ang tympanum. So that part right there is the tympanum. So this one is the door. Kani siya ang door. Mo ni siya ang door. So ang taas ana nga door, mo na siya ang tympanum. And mostly, this part right here, nasa yung mga sculpture. So, to give you an example, in actual, unsay forma na niya, it looks like that. No? So, inigsud nimo the entrance part of the church. Agi kanin niya, kaning tympanum. This one right here is the tympanum. So, if you noticed here, a lot of sculpture right here. I think this one at the center is Jesus and the apostles. Siguro, here. So, that's the tympanum. So, again, no, naa siya mga sculpture. What if walay sculpture? Still, the term is tympanum. So, if you have that space between the arc, because this is the arc, this is the door below that arc. This space right here is what you call tympanum. For now, sa kanang mga current or sa mga balay na to or something, or kanang mga other buildings, this one, instead of having this tympanum, having this wall here or having this sculptured wall here, ang uban is gamitan na siya og window. Kanito, gamitan na window. So, mo na ni mga bago nga practices. But before, for kanang mga churches, they always provide here tympanum with sculptures. Okay, so this one is actually in Vézelay Abbey in France. Another term we have here is trumou. Ang term na niya is trumou. So trumou is a column supporting the tympanum of a doorway at its center. So going back to our sketch. So if this one is the tympanum, hopefully makita niyo akong pointer, no? That red dot here. If this one is the tympanum, this part right here at the center is the trumou. Uban i-pronounce na trumou, but sa kuha nga part, I will discard this as trumou. So again, no? Tympanum. This one right here is the trumou. So it's a column actually supporting this part, the tympanum. So there's the door, the column at the center, and this one here is the tympanum. So the term for that column is what we call the trumou. Okay, so going back to that example, so nga na siya forma sa actual. So asa man ang trumou anak? This one right here. Kani siya, kani center. So again, unsa ni siya nga example? Vézelay Abbey in France. Vézelay Abbey in France. Okay, so this one. This one. So Vézelay Abbey in France. So again, here, this one is the tympanum. This one is the trumou. If you wonder, unsay meaning anang abbey, the term abbey? I think you're familiar with the term, di ba? Kanang mga abbey, Westminster Abbey. I think that's one of the most famous building na abbey. Abbey means it's a building wherein occupied by monk, nuns, mga kwan ba? May mga madre. So if occupied by monk, nuns, priests in Europe, tawag na sila abbey. So instead of church, pwede nila tawagon og abbey. So from the example, Vézelay Abbey, actually pwede po siya tawagon og Vézelay Church in France. But again, that term abbey in Europe is it means buildings occupied by monks, nuns, or priests, which is mostly churches. Mo gina siya gi-occupied na siya mga monks, nuns, and priests. Okay, any questions so far? So here, di nyo makita, wala siya yung rose window. But still, this example is Romanesque architecture. No? Even though wala siya yung rose window, naan niya kay mga arc lang, this is an example of Romanesque architecture. So again, this part right here is the trumeau. So it is the column that supports the tympanum. Another term. So manata og trumeau, tympanum. Here we have order. So I think it's one of the common terms, but specifically for history of architecture, order any of the several concentric rings of masonry forming an arc, especially when each projects the one below. So from our example, this one right here is the order. This one. So medyo dugol kayo og mga terms, no? Here from the tympanum, here we have the trumeau, the column. Here, this part here is the order. So again, what do you mean by order? Any of several concentric rings of masonry forming an arc, especially when each projects the one below. So if you try to sketch it on section, if mo na siya ang arc, dili na siya flat. Murag inga na siya, no? Order. So projecting or projects the one from below. So if mo ni mo hang first na order, na mo project, na mo project lain, na mo project, and so on and so forth. And then this is your tympanum, kani nga surface. And this is your, siguro nakaigamay yung sculpture nga ra. This is now your trumeau, which is the center of your door. So again, sectional view ni siya. So this is the order, this part right here. The concentric rings of masonry forming an arc. So here, medyo gamay ra iyang order. I think 1, 2, 3, tulo ka order. In other examples, kani siya, grabe, kita kayo iyang order. Are you familiar with this church? This one is located in the Philippines. So if na familiar ani nga church, you can type in sa chat. I'll try to check if na makakuha og unsa ni siya nga church. Okay. So that church is actually the Manila Cathedral. So if you're familiar with this church, katong mga nakatunag NCR sa Manila, nani siya dapit sa may Intramuros. And then actually in Intramuros daghan kayong mga old structures na tunog. Medyo if you're an architecture student, maadto kag Manila, I think ang first nimo i-visit or first nimo ituyok is ang Intramuros. It's in the heart of the Manila, and then daghan kang madtuan like Dolo siya Binondo and so on and so forth. Pwede kang mag food trip na to Chinese na mga restaurant, which is kind of good compared sa mga Chinese restaurant nato in Cebu. So siguro kung if pwede na mag-travel, if wala na yung pandemic, hopefully maka-visit mo katong mga wala pa kag-visit na rin. So if you would ask me, sir, is Manila Cathedral Romanesque architecture, part of the Romanesque architecture? I would say no, but it is Romanesque inspired. Why? It's because Romanesque architecture start or exist during the 11th century. 11th century na siya ang Romanesque architecture. This Manila Cathedral was built during the 19th century. Siguro mga 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. Pero ang iyang basis of design, if you try to look at it closely, based siya sa Romanesque architecture. That is why there's a term, ang gitawag siya o New Romanesque or what we call the Neo-Romanesque. Neo. Or the New. Neo tapos Romanesque na term. Neo-Romanesque. Pwede pa na siya tawagon o Romanesque Revival. No? So mga ana siya. The old architectural styles gi-copy, gi-adapt, and then gi-improve. So gitawag na siya og mga revival or what we call the Neo-Romanesque. For example, if you try to, the one that I've showed you in YouTube or in the link that I provided, the one that is made by Calatrava. So if you try to look at it, based siya sa Hagia Sophia, which is Byzantine architecture. So that type of architecture by Santiago Calatrava is actually Byzantine revival or Neo-Byzantine. But actually wala niya gikuha tanan nga mga elements, but mostly ang iyang building form mostly inspired by the Byzantine architecture, which is the Hagia Sophia. Okay, so again, no, the Manila Cathedral, it's not part of the Romanesque architecture era, but it is a Neo-Romanesque or New Romanesque. Questions so far? We'll check the chat. Wala pa, no? Okay. Next term. Another term we have here is tabernacle. So tabernacle is a canopied recess for a religious image or icon. So in the Visual Dictionary of Architecture, makita nimo nga na siya ingana nga sketch. So what does it look like in actual? So ingana siya forma, no? This one is actually a 3D view. 3D generated nga photo. So you can see it right here. If this is your tympanum, wala siya trumo. So pwede ra na walay trumo. This one dili siya matawag og trumo. Kaning columns right here. The trumo is always at the middle part nga nag-support sa imong tympanum. This one right here, the series of arcs, is the order. And the tabernacle is this one, the canopied recess, this part right here. This is the tabernacle. Recess meaning kanang medyo nisulod gamay or niche. Ang term na niya is niche. Na. So in sectional view again, if mo na imuhang wall, mo pasulod na siya gamay, and then mo balik pa ana. Then ngadto na ang sculpture. Uban ang sculpture freestanding, ay uban nga gipilit sa bongbong. So ngadto na ana. And then some of them na mga canopies here. Na sila ipangbutang nga mga details. It's either arc, made of arc, na uban horizontal lang, and so on and so forth. So this one right here is what you call the tabernacle. And mostly there are tabernacles in entrances. Nasa tabernacles sa altar. I think you're very familiar with this. Kana sa altar, no? Nahanang ito ang image ni Jesus Christ and other saints. Nasa kilid-kilid. Yan ay mangyayani. Those are tabernacles. So here, asa man ang tabernacle ano niya? So this one right there. So again, no, unsay tawag ani niya kani? Order, tympanum, trumu. So ang door ani niya actually gi-open niya, medyo ngit-ngit man ang Romanesque architecture. It's because of the iyang characteristic na sober and dignified, diba? If you remember our last meeting discussion. So if you notice, no, unsa ka ngit-ngit episode, because most of the buildings under Romanesque architecture have smaller windows. So sober and dignified, meaning if mo sud ka ngadto medyo maka-realize kasi mo mga mistakes, realize kasi mo mga ah, mga pag-cheat before no, sa inyong mga exams nga na. So again, tabernacle, order, timpano, trumu. Okay. Another term we have here is campanile. So asa man di ang campanile? Is it this one? This one or this one? So the campanile is actually this one right here. So if you talk about the Pisa complex or the Pisa Cathedral, it's always the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which is actually the campanile. So what do you mean by campanile? So campanile is a bell tower, usually near but not attached to the body of a church. Usually near but not attached to the body of church. So in Romanesque architecture, usually yun, not attached siya sa body sa church. Again, not attached. But in Gothic architecture, which is later on, atong makita as an example or makita na to as if we try to differentiate it in Romanesque architecture, some of the Gothic churches naka-attach ang iyahang bell tower. So if which is I think some of the churches in the Philippines ingana yang forma. Like for example, no, mo na imong main church na duha ka tower right here. To say na duha ka tower right here. And one of those towers is the campanile. Nasa uban ang duha gid mismo ang campanile. So there are other churches nga ingana iyang design. There are two towers and then church at the center. So mostly in the Philippines na mga daghang ingana nga mga churches. So here in this example in the Pisa Cathedral in the Pisa complex, this one is the campanile. And this one is detached, meaning not attached to the church. So here is the Pisa Church, and this one right here is the baptistery. So again, the campanile, the church, and this one is the baptistery. So from the Visual Dictionary of Architecture, mo na ilang sketch na namin ito. So this is what you call the Pisa complex. So ganun nga gitawag siya complex. It's because there are more than one buildings na existed on that site. So if na kay baptistery, church, campanile, and then uban na pa kay mga surrounding buildings nga gamiton for the monks, for the nuns, for the priests. That whole development is what you call the complex. So this one is in Pisa. So gitawag siya Pisa complex. Okay, so we'll have a 5-minute break, water break, bathroom break, and then we'll continue after 5 minutes. Siguro around 6:45, we'll continue around 6:45. So if you have questions sa itong mga discussions today and previous days, just let me know. Just type in sa atong chat. So 5-minute break and then we'll continue sa atong discussion. Hello? You have any questions so far? Medyo sa Romanesque architecture, daghang terms. So, medyo nagkadaghan na ang terms nga inyong na-learn. So, from the very basic terms in early Christian, in Byzantine architecture, still magamit niya punto siya sa Romanesque architecture. No? Wala na akong ibalik ang part sa church because that part of the church is common to all churches like narthex, even though Byzantine, early Christian, Romanesque or Gothic architecture, still gitawag yapon na siya narthex. Nave, same term, gitawag yapon siya nave. The ambulatory, same yapon, tawag siya ambulatory. The apse, same. The crossing and the transept, tawag yapon siya, same yapon. The aisles, no? So those are the basic parts of a church, not just in early Christian and Byzantine architecture, but still magamit siya sa Romanesque and Gothic and other types of churches. So wala na ko siya balik ang mga terms. So these are additional terms which are somewhat specific to this style of architecture. So medyo nagkadaghan na siya and try to understand each and every one of them. Don't memorize. Ayaw lang i-memorize. Try to familiarize lang what's the difference. And one way of familiarizing it is through sketching. That is why I required you to do the sketching of a church based on your own choosing. So, nihatag ko ninyo og skis number 1. So, for Romanesque architecture, mahatag sa God. Skis number 2. And then, I will post it in the assignments tab after this class. Mahatag ko nga to and then my instructions. But the deadline is after the midterm exam na. But you can do it in advance. Like, for example, like, if atong exam is on the September 28th, so siguro on the weekend, you will try to browse your notes, browse the recordings, and then you would try to study it. One of the best way is sketching. So, pwede na nyo i-sketch daan ang katong skis number 2 na to, which is more or less the same way sa inyong gibuhat sa skis number 1, but a little bit simpler, mas simple siya. So, pwede na to siya ang inyong skis nga gibuhat during sa inyong pag-study, mo na inyong i-submit. So, murag hitting 2 birds in 1 stone. Studying the subject, at the same time having that sketches as part of your requirements. So probably I will have that deadline on the 30th. 30th. Okay, those sketches. Okay. Any questions? Any questions so far? Sir Hinay, di na ko masabta ni chat ni Jessa. Kisa may maka-decipher aning iyahang message nga rin. KH Willu. Sige, tanong na ni like. Any questions so far?
Sir, murag ni ana si Jessa sir nga hina dayon at niya murag typo ra na ang iyang kon.
Okay, sige. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we'll continue, no? We'll continue sa atong discussion. So if you have questions, just let me know. So, kabalo na mo ha? Campanile, the church, and this one is the baptistry. So there are other types of building in Romanesque architecture aside from the churches, aside from the baptistery, natay gitawag og castles. And most of those castles are with fortification. What do you mean by fortification? So here, no? Fortification is a defensive military work constructed for the purpose of strengthening a position. So again, if you try to read it, fortification is a defensive military work constructed for the purpose of strengthening a position. So again, ngano gani ni create or ngano gani na ni siya nga mga examples or buildings during the Romanesque architecture? It's because this is the time in Europe wherein feudalism started. Na yung mga lords, na yung mga kings. There's a king of that part of the country, and then ay lords, and then at the same time sa bottom part na nga ang mga peasants or gitawag nato mga slaves or mga farmers. So they try to fortify kaning defensive military work, ilang i-fortify ang ilang base because aside from they are afraid from the kanang peasants sa kato mga farmers nga mong invade sa ilang mga kings, sa ilang mga lords, they also try to fortify, increase their security in case there are other murag tribe or there are other kings sad from other countries nga mo invade ana nga lugar nila. So it's a war actually mo na usually na sa mga movies ingana ang inyong mga makita. It's actually naitabo na before in Europe, in these countries, England, sa France, diba? So naitabo na siya. So in terms of architectural style, naitabo na siya during the Romanesque era. And in terms of the term is what we call the fortification. So unsa may forma na niya in actual. So nga na, no? This one, castle, this is a castle, example of a castle. And the fortification is right here. Wala nila gi-fortify tanan. Why? Obvious na siguro ang answer, no? It's because this part right here is the part wherein pwede ma-access ang castle. So, in terms of defense, this part right here is vulnerable. Kani siya. So here, na sila yung mga kanina, na pa siya forest. So, lisod na siya i-access. Medyo here, high wall sila. And here, river. Do pwede ma-access sa river but medyo lisod kay I think on this part side medyo grabe sad ka high walls. So their fortification is mostly or focused on this part wherein ngadto ang entrance. Okay, so this one here is the fortification. This one right here. So if you notice, this picture right here, kanina yung mga terms, this is taken from the Visual Dictionary of Architecture. So if you want to read all of this, kanina mga terms here, just refer it to the Visual Dictionary of Architecture and then pangitaan to fortification. So to discuss a few, we have heard the term bastion. Bastion. So what does it mean? So bastion, a projecting part of a rampart or other fortification, typically forming an irregular pentagon attached at the base to the main work. So going back, no, so asa man ang bastion ano niya? This one right here. No? Mo ni siya ang bastion. So ni-form siya og actually ang term niya is irregular pentagon but partly ni-form siya og a triangle right here. No? So ni-project na siya because ngadto na mo situate or ngadto na mo locate ang ilahang mga kanang mga archers, nangara ang ilahang mga warriors. Moy mo view, moy mo tan-aw ug kinsa na yung mga kontra nga padong. So again, the term is bastion. Another term we have here is ravelin. So ravelin is a V-shaped outwork outside the main ditch of a fortress, covering the works between two bastions. So if mo na siya ang bastion here, if this one is the bastion, there's another bastion right here. Wala lang gyapon og drawing, no, but if you look at the plan, hindi na rin siya ma-control Z, no? If you look at the plan, this one is the bastion, another bastion, that red circle, no? Those are the bastions. And then this one in blue are the ravelin. So if you notice, there's a difference of height between these two. So kani siya mo na first line of defense. This one mo na siya ang second. So if ever na invade na nila ni nga part kaning ravelin, napay another part na mo carry out sa defense. So ingana, no? I think you're very familiar, no, sa mga movies na mga ingani nga mga portions sa ilang fortification, sa ilang castles. So again, no, this one are the bastions, the red one, and this blue right here are the ravelins. Okay. So another terms, ato lang i-run through siguro, no? Siguro mga ginagbay lang nga terms. We have here, hopefully makita rin yun, no? For those who are using cell phones, that is why nag-conduct ko poll regarding kasi naggamit og laptop or cell phones. For you to be able to fully engage yourself during the discussion, kay basig ang ako ang mga PowerPoint na gagmay nga words na dili kay ma-view. So hopefully, aside from referring it to your cell phone, hopefully if ever ako na ni siyang i-upload, hopefully ma-browse niyo balik ang mga terms. So we have here, no, another terms. We have the sally port. So sally port is a gateway in a fortification, permitting a large number of troops to move rapidly from the besieged position and attack the besiegers. So kani siya, sally port. No, so again, no, diha na manggawas ang kanang mga nagkabayo, no, nag-horse, mga horsemen, mga kanang may mga dala nga mga swords, nga rin na din ang gawas sa sally port. Another term we have here, casement, so a vault or chamber in a rampart having embrasures for artillery. Sa rampart, asa man ang rampart nga part? Rampart is nasa other ano ni siya kaning rampart. Actually the rampart is this one, no? Kani mo ni siya rampart. So a vault or chamber in a rampart having embrasures for artillery. So that means here na gitago nga mga casement. Na diri sa may kaning ilang vault, kaning sa may rampart na portion. Another term here we have here is curtain. So curtain, an enclosing wall connecting two bastions or towers. So if bastion 1 na kay bastion 2 somewhere here, this part right here kani siya mo na siya gitawag og curtain, kani nag-connect sa two bastions. Gorge is the rear passageway into a bastion or similar outwork. So kani lang giagianan. Passageway into a bastion. Sumsod ka diha, naka-ready diha ang mga army, mga military para pag defense or tutanaw nila sila mga kontra. Terraplane, the top platform or horizontal surface of a rampart where guns are mounted. So here, so it's either machine guns, uban karong mga archers, diba? Nga rin ang ipambutang. So bitawag siya o terraplane. Here, another term we have here is flank. Dili na kanang flank na kanang flanker, no? Sa balot na flank. So flank here, the part of a bastion that extends from the curtain to the face. So flank is usually naka here makita ninyo ang forma, medyo wala kayo siya na naka-angular, but in actual, flank usually designed in a way nga nagforma ang flank. So say, if mo ni imuhang curtain, sectional view ni siya, sectional view. Nadiri ang tao or ang army. The flank is usually nakayanag forma. Why? Para dili sayon katkaton. And then in some other fortification or kanang castles, napagid ni diri mga moat, tubig. Pwede na hulugan og kanang gas, and then para digid fully of kasulod ang mga tao nga tubig pag siya. So maglisod ka og cut ani niya. Unless na kay ladder, just mo na usually buhaton sa mga movies, di ba? May magdalag ladder. Sa Lord of the Rings, di ba? May mga nagdalag ladder, mga orcs, and so on and so forth. So yan ano, those movies are actually based on the old structures found in Europe. Although movie siya, di siya tinuod ni tabo, but some of the ideas are based on the existing structures in Europe. Another term we have here, shoulder. Shoulder is the angle between the face and the flank of a bastion. So here, yani, ngani na magsigtago-tago, no? Ulo ra ipakita. Dali dapit to my shoulder. So face, either of the two outer sides that form the salient angle of a bastion. So kani, so it's face, first face, second face here. Okay. So again, don't worry, kani nga mga ginagmay nga terms, I will not include this one sa inyong exams, but try to read through between this kani nga mga terms right here. What I will include is the terms, the major terms that I presented, like bastion, diba? The ravelin, diba? Yan na. Kanya siya nga mga terms. Here we have other terms. Outwork. So outwork is a minor defensive position established beyond a main fortified area. So medyo ang outwork is kinda from the term itself, outwork, medyo layo na ka sa katong face. If we go back to our previous slide, if ang outwork, you're somewhere here, ngari ka mo siya ang outwork. So if this is the gorge, and ngari terraplane, gorge, terraplane, the outwork is somewhere here na. I can't sketch. Okay. Another term, glacis, a slope extending downward in front of a fortification in such a way that it brings advancing enemy soldiers into the most direct line of fire. Again, no? A slope extending downward in front of a fortification in such a way that it brings advancing enemy soldiers into the most direct line of fire. So for example, if nadiri ay imuhang enemy, nakasud na sila, na invade na nila ang imuhang first line of defense right here. So if nangari ang enemy na, nangara ang mga tao, so inigsakal lang nga disakal ni. First mo makita is kani ilahang body nga ri. So makita-an na nimo. So that slope right here, this slope is what you call glacis. Another term, we have counterscarp. So let me zoom this part right here. Counterscarp, the exterior slope or wall of the ditch surrounding a rampart. So ang uban, ingana ilang slope, but the other part, pwede pod pabali ilang slope. So kani siya, sayon ra kani katkato ni sa mga kontra ni kani mga ani nga slope. No? Kay naka-slope na daan, kat na sila. So mostly nakabali ang slope ani niya, pabali. So escarp, the inner slope or wall of the ditch surrounding a rampart. So also called scarp. So there's a S scarp na po siya gitawag og counter scarp. So this part right here. So another term, parapet. I think very familiar sa to when we design natin mga parapet to hide our walls. So in Romanesque era, so parapet is a defensive wall or elevation of earth or stone protecting soldiers from enemy fire. So kani siya. So it's actually the same use, no? Dili makita ang imong sulod, so butang kag parapet. So nowadays, unsay gamit sa tong parapet? We use parapet to hide our roofs. So nakay parapet diha. Sectional view gyapon siya guys. Nakay canopy. Ana. Siguro diri nakay signage sa imong design. But at the interior part, nakay roof nga ripana. So nakay gutter somewhere here. And then here, imong truss. So inig tan-aw na sa tawo sa design nimo. If ang tawo na somewhere here, makita siya, uy, flat roof guro ning gigamit nga design ni architect. Kay wa may makita nga atop, di man makita ang gable or hip, di ba? So actually nakaparapet ang design, and then ang roof na gable or hip na sa sulod, or shed. Usually shed di na ka magsigig hip and gable kay sayang imong truss, no? Shed type of roofing na sa sulod. So this one here is what you call parapet, which has the same use, no, to hide. So before sa Romanesque architecture, to hide, to protect the soldiers from enemy fire. This one, to hide your roof. Di nga nga makita imong roof nga rin. So imong bitag parapet. Okay. Another term we have here is cordon. Cordon is a projecting force of stones below the parapet of a rampart. So somewhere here, this one, may mga stones. Berm is a ledge between the exterior slope of a rampart and the moat of a fortification. Also called berme. Actually, berme na siya. So later on, atong ipakita ang berm. So rampart is here, this one right here. A broad embankment of earth raised as a fortification around a place and usually surmounted by a parapet. So if we go back sa katong atong main na drawing, so rampart here, mo ni siya kaning rampart ni siya. Parapet, this one parapet. I will change my pen color, no? This one right here, parapet ni siya. Parapet. This one also here is what you call the parapet. Okay. So if you notice, kanina, kindly note this one. Very important na makabaw mo ani nga term. Moat and bailey. Moat and bailey, a Norman castle of the 10th through 12th century, consisting of a moat placed within a bailey. So asa man ang moat, asa man ang bailey. So here. So this one is the moat. So unsa man na siyang moat? A steep mound of earth surrounded by a ditch and surmounted by a timber stockade and tower. So this one, kani siya, kaning gi-arrow, mo na siya gitawag og moat. So asa man ang bailey? So the bailey is kani siya diri nga part. This one right here. So bailey, the outer wall of a castle or the courtyard enclosed by it. So kanang fence nga ni surround nila, the fence is what you call the palisade. Okay? So pale, actually pale mo na siya ang paghimo sa ilang fence. Gamit na sila og pointed stick or stake. So before, kanang when they design castles, they usually place the most important part no, sa castle nila around this part right here. Taas na taas para na sila yung vantage point in terms of view. Makita nila ang kinsay mo attack, kinsay mo conquer ang ilang area. So aside from tower, pwede sa nila butangan og if ever dako ang ilahang place, pwede na nabutangan og castle nga retibo. And this one right here kanin sa Bailey, nangari ang katong ilahang mga soldiers, my first line of defense in case na attack. So again, gitawag siya moat and Bailey. So kindly note this term right here, moat and Bailey. So asa diha ang berm? This one right here is the berm. Berm can be man-made, pwede sad natural na naka-elevate na dana siya nga surroundings. So it's made of soil na naka ano na siya na porma na. So murag in sectional view, if this is your castle or tower right here, so say porma na in terms of fortification, this one here is the berm, and then on the lower part nangad to ang Bailey. So defense na siya na mga fence, and then ngara na ang outer area sa fortification or castle. So there is a rear portion, usually nagatubang na siya og mga river na kay good vantage point. So again, the way that they place their castles, their kaning mga towers, ang ilahang end of mind is mangita tag isa ka place nga advantage sa tuwa in terms of security. Makita dayon og kinsa tong mga padong, makita dayon tong kinsa tong mga ninggawas, and so on and so forth. So that's the idea behind on how they chose their locations. So if you notice, no, kana makita mag-search mo mga castles, fortification during the Romanesque architecture, during the Romanesque era, usually naka-elevate yun ang location sa mga castles. Dili siya located on a flat land. Usually elevated ang yung location. Okay, so questions so far? Okay, so sir, unsa gay difference of berm and moat? Okay, sige. So here, may balik kamay ha. Berm, a ledge between the exterior slope of a rampart and the moat of a fortification. So again, no? Berm, a ledge between the exterior slope of a rampart and the moat of a fortification. On the next slide, we have here moat, a steep mound of earth surrounding by a ditch and surmounted by a timber stockade and tower. So if imo na siyang i-sectional view, this part right here, kaning moat, na siya yung nag-support na kaning berm. So going back, asa naman to akong sketch? So if drawing on mo ang sectional view, this one right here, kaning blue, no? Kaning nag-support ano nila, no? Usually if man-made na siya, this one right here, kaning nag-support sa moat. Mo na siya gitawag og berm. So the berm, the whole thing is moat. The whole thing, ha, tanan, included ng berm and so on and so forth. That's what's actually moat. O-T-T-E. So if you notice, in this type of fortification, there are two parts. This part right here, kani siyang part nga din niya, that's the whole moat. And this part right here is the whole bailey. Mo nang gitawag siya moat and bailey. So moat and bailey. So dali na siya, moat, and that's the upper part. Bailey is the lower part. So moat is the upper part. Bailey is the lower part. Yes, support. Yeah. The berm supports the overall moat. Okay. Thank you for that question. Okay. So here, for the next term, nagkadaghan ng mga term, no? But don't worry. Nalang ko yung mga siguro pangkuan, siguro mga usa or duha. But if dili pa ninyo makita kayo clearly here, you can refer it sa Visual Dictionary of Architecture. Okay, so let's try to read it. Turret. No? Turret ni Killjoy. So actually, turret is a small tower forming part of a larger structure, frequently beginning some distance above the ground, also called turret. So kani siya, portion right here. It's a small tower forming part of a larger structure. Actually, aside from this part right here, the keep, ang turret sad nasa day tao nga magman nga ra. And usually that person right there, siya mo signal. So if ever nanay mo attack, it's either mo wave siya o fire, and then mo hatag na siya signal sa other towers also. So usually the turret is the highest tower in a fortification. Murag siya mo pinakataas na tower. So that tower, manned by a certain soldier, kita niya tibok nga fortification. So if you noticed here, the turret here, it's a small tower, but it has a higher advantage in terms of elevation. So another term important, I'll just leave the other terms na di kay importante ha. So turret here is important. You have to note this one. Take note on this term, turret. Another term is keep. So keep is the innermost and strongest structure or tower of a medieval castle used as a place of residence, especially in times of siege, also called dungeon. So katong mga importante nga tao, katong keep, iyang wife, or kitsa pa ng iyang mga lords, nga na ipangbutang sa keep. So that portion, that keep, this one right here, kaning tibok nga structure, mo na siya pinaka-inner parts sa castle. So meaning if ever na-invade ang castle, mo na siya pinaka-last nga mapuntahan. And that keep is actually na siya tunnel padong nga mo exit. Okay, dili lang when they designed castles before, which is usually makita nyo sa mga movies, dili lang kay gidesign nila nga if ever ma-invade, pildi na sila daan. So what they do is, although na sila keep na pinaka-safe portion nila sa ilahang castle, they design it in a way nga there's a tunnel, there's a door going down, tunnel, na pwede sila maka-escape somewhere here. So nga na ang ilahang pag-design sa mga castles. Actually, there's a documentary. So if you want to try to look, akong ihatag sa inyo ang link. Medyo lingaw siya, ang how they design castles. So siguro ihatag na ko after na sa final exam. Okay, para dili kayo sad mo loaded. But that Hagia Sophia na documentary, please watch that documentary. Please watch that. Maybe basinday na exam nga based on your understanding and makuha din yung ngadto sa Hagia Sophia documentary. So in this page, ang pinaka-importante lang no is the turret, the keep. So also aside from kaning keep and turret, the fortification or the castle has its own chapel. So no need na sila mo ato sa kanang mga big churches. nara sila ilang pagalingon nga own chapel. Another term we have here, medyo nagkadaghan ng terms actually. This one, battlements. This one is a very important term. Battlements. Merlon and Crenel. Okay. So battlement, so parapet having a regular alternation of merlons and crenels, originally for defense but later used as decorative motif. So also called embattlement. So merlon, one of the solid parts between the crenels of a battlement. So any of the open spaces alternating the merlons of a battlement. So if you notice, na, sa mga designs, sa mga fortification, sa mga design sa mga castles, ang ilang mga towers are provided with battlements. So from the term itself, battle, pang-away gini siya, no? Archers, katong na mga guns, katong na mga any tools that they have na pwede na ibato sa ilang kontra, ngara na sila mag-atang sa battlements. And then these battlements na siya duha ka parts, no? Merlon mo na siya ang part nga diha sila mo hide. Crenels mo na siya ang opening nga diha sila mo pakita. And then mo throw sa ilahang archers or any other guns siguro or any other nga tools na sila. So again, no, very important term here. We have the battlements, merlons, and crenels. So it says here before, it is used for battle or defense. But later on, if we'll try to have some future examples in other type of architecture, gigamit na ni siya as decorative. No? And makita sa ninyo sa mga uban nga mga designs in American buildings, nan na say mga ingani nga designs. Why? Nanang na may ingana nga design. Did they copy the Romanesque architecture castles? Probably yes. Pwede po no. Ano man, when you design a certain building, like facade, ingana, no? Like for example, warehouse or a commercial building na grabe ka flat, like when you design it, ang facade kay flat ra gyud kayo. And then nakaparapet wall ka, so that means imong roof is on the inner side, meaning wala makita. So when you draw your perspective or in front view, flat lang gid imong building, no? So what they do is butangan nila og battlements design. So nga na. So para na ay gamay nga texture or para na ay gamay nga change sa form here. Other designs, butangan nila ang ilang battlements, ilang straight. And then, usbo nila ang materials. Butangan nila horizontal nga wood, something. It's very common, no, sa mga designs. Those are the applications of the battlements from the Romanesque architecture before na pwede nimo ma-apply sa imong design nowadays. So if ever sobraan ka flat, like, for example, you have your designs, commercial structure, sobra ka flat ang imong facade. Like flat jud kayo, the way you create your form, rectangular jud siya. So how to break that wall? So you can create something like this. Here, another term, drawbridge. A drawbridge that can be raised, let down, or drawn aside to prevent access or to permit passage beneath it. So I think you're very familiar, no? Kanang gikuha na ng bridge sa mga movies, no? And then napay usa mo layat, di ba? And medyo nakasulod siya. So the term is drawbridge. So if dili siya ka layat anang drawbridge, ang hulog siya diri sa moat. This moat is different from the moat na M-O-T-T-E, the moat and Bailey. There's a big difference between that one. Again, no, this moat right here, we'll erase this. This moat right here is different from the moat and Bailey. So lahi na siya, no? So again, no, katong moat and Bailey, ang moat is the upper portion, the Bailey is the lower portion. But here, the moat here is the water surrounding the castle or surrounding the fortification, the moat. So drawbridge, again, no, the bridge that can be raised, let down, or drawn aside to prevent access or to permit passage beneath it. Portcullis, a strong grating of iron or timber hung over the gateway of a fortified place in such a way that it could be lowered quickly to prevent passage. So for example, no, if ang drawbridge kay naay ni ambak di ang kontra niya, nakakupot pa siya rin, medyo kusog kay siya jump, medyo nakakupot pa siya ani, and hapit na siya musod. The next line of defense is the portcullis. Automatic ilan na i-close, and this gate is actually made of steel. So, di nakasulod. So, first defense is drawbridge, tangtangon ang bridge, mahulog sa moat. Siguro nasa yung mga pets nga to nga mga buhaya or something. No? And then, if ever makasud good, portcullis is the next one. And then, diri na yung mga tao nga, may imagine niyo ang kanang sa mga movies. Diri na yung mga tao nga nagdala og sword. Ready na. Ay, sorry. Here. Ready na makig-away. Diri sa sulod. Right here. Okay? So medyo taas pa din itong discussion about Romanesque architecture. No? We have 4 minutes left, but there are a lot of examples right here about Romanesque architecture. I will share these slides in advance to you guys para na mo yung reference na mabasa-basa. But here, Romanesque architecture, ato na i-continue next meeting. And again, our exam will be on the September 28 itong exam. So, ngalita mo stop here and then ato i-continue sa mga examples. Gamay lang ni siya. Medyo daghan lang ang slides because I presented a lot of pictures that you can use as reference. Pero gamay ra ni siya o when we discuss this one, dali ra ni siya discuss. Other questions? Questions? Do you have questions? Sa may inyong mga pangutana?
Murag none so far na, sir.
Okay, sige, sige.
Na-comprehend na, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So, just to give you idea kung sa ito ang midterm exam, there are two types. Medyo nagsugod na kong himo and partly happy na ko mahuman. There are two types of exam. The first type is multiple choice. So, sa multiple choice, gamay ra mong time. Let's say, mo close siya in just 15 minutes. So, gamay ra mong time para, kabalo na mo unsay reason nga nang gamay og time, no? So, multiple choice, mas sayon siya, mas dali siya i-answer na ang choices daan. So, make sure, based sa inyong understanding, mo sa inyo hang i-pick na choice based on your own understanding. And the second part sa atong exam is the identification and essay part. Okay, which is sayon rasad na. Nata na sa atong discussions, and if ever you've listened, naminaw mo sa mga recordings, dali ra kayo niyo ma-answer. Okay? So, hopefully, naka-submit na tanan sa iskis number 1. Let me check if pila nakabuok naka-submit. 37 out of 51. So, kindly inform your other classmates to submit their iskis number 1, the Byzantine architecture. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, guys, have a good day, a good night. Again, please try to balance things out. Uh, if dili kaya, ayaw lang kayo you have to, aside from your physical health, you have to protect also your mental health. So if you're really stressed, talk to your talk to your classmates, talk to your parents, talk to your instructors. Ayaw i dibdiba nga kanang moabot sa point nga murag mag-goal na ka niya, grabe na kay ka-stress. It's not healthy anymore. Okay? So kindly balance things out.
Thank you, sir. Sir, clarification lang, sir. 28 man to yung giingon sa midterm, sir, no?
Yes, it's a Tuesday, 28.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so thank you everyone and have a nice day. Pa-vaccine na mo, pa-vaccine. Please, pa-vaccine na. Salamat.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.